The air in Flatwoods usually smelled of damp earth and wood smoke, but on the evening of September 12, 1952, the atmosphere turned heavy with a different kind of electricity. It was just after dusk when a group of boys playing football noticed a fiery streak cutting through the sky. To their young eyes, it looked like a burning ball of copper plunging toward the horizon, eventually disappearing behind the crest of a hill on the G.G. Fisher farm. Driven by the impulsive bravery of youth, Edward and Fred May, along with their friends, ran to the small frame house where their mother, Kathleen May, was tending to chores. They weren't just reporting a sighting, they were asking for permission to chase the unknown. Kathleen, perhaps sensing the genuine distress in their voices, or simply wanting to ensure they didn't get hurt in the dark, grabbed a heavy flashlight and joined them. Along with Gene Lemon, a local National Guardsman, they began the steep trek up the ridge. The climb was arduous. The humidity of the day had settled into a thick, low-lying fog that clung to the brush. As they neared the summit, the environment began to shift. The familiar nighttime sounds of crickets and rustling leaves fell silent. In its place was a rhythmic, metallic pulsing, and a smell began to permeate the woods. It was a thick, oily odor that Kathleen later described as a mix of burning sulfur and hot metal. It was a scent that didn't belong in the West Virginia wilderness. Gene Lemon led the way, his flashlight beam swinging through the mist. They reached the top of the ridge and saw a pulsing red light about 50 feet away. Thinking they had found a downed plane or a meteor, Lemon turned his light directly toward a large oak tree. The beam of the flashlight didn't reveal a crash site. Instead, it illuminated a nightmare. Standing beneath the branches was a towering figure, nearly 10 feet tall. Its face was a terrifying, blood-red orb that seemed to glow from within. Framing the head was a dark, pointed cowl shaped like the ace of spades. The body was draped in what looked like a rigid, pleated skirt of dark green metal. As the light hit the entity, it didn't run. It emitted a high-pitched, piercing hiss that vibrated in their chests. Its spindly, claw-like arms reached outward, and it began to glide toward them, not walking, but hovering over the tall grass. The movement was smooth and mechanical, defying the uneven terrain of the hillside. The group didn't wait for a closer look. Panicked and gasping for air, they scrambled back down the hill, stumbling over rocks and tearing through briars. By the time they reached the safety of the town, several members of the group were visibly ill. In the hours that followed, the physical toll became apparent. Gene Lemon was seized by violent convulsions and vomiting. Kathleen May and the boys reported that their throats felt swollen and raw, as if they had been scorched by invisible flames. This monster sickness persisted for days, leaving doctors puzzled by the sudden onset of respiratory distress and nausea in otherwise healthy people. Local authorities and investigators arrived at the scene the next morning. They found flattened patches of grass and 2 skid marks in the mud that didn't match any known vehicle, along with a lingering, oily residue on the leaves. However, the official explanations were swift and skeptical. The Air Force suggested the light was a meteor, and skeptics argued that the monster was merely a barn owl perched on a branch, its features distorted by the group's fear and the shimmering haze of the flashlight. Yet, for those who stood on that ridge, the owl theory felt like an insult to their senses. They didn't describe a bird. They described a presence that was cold, mechanical, and utterly foreign. The Flatwoods Monster became a cornerstone of Appalachian lore, a story of a humid night when the boundary between the mundane and the impossible briefly dissolved, leaving behind a legacy of terror and a sickness that lingered long after the red glow faded from the hills. Don't forget to tune in next week for more spooky tales.